Today, we'll be testing 3 different methods to add halation to your footage to get that highly coveted film look. We'll be going over how to properly set up each one and how to use them within Davinci Resolve. And these are the 3 methods. Davinci Resolve's OFX halation plugin, which is free, but you need the studio version of Davinci Resolve. The second one is Dehancer, which is the third-party plugin. This one, unfortunately, isn't free, but if you already have Dehancer or if you'd like to purchase it, you can get the full plugin or you can get the halation tool by itself, which is only about $100. And the third one is actually a custom node tree that we're using to recreate the halation effect from scratch. Now, what is halation for those of you who may be new here? In very simple terms, halation is when really bright light literally spreads out on the inside of the film, creating a kind of extra glow on the picture. This effect mostly manifests in the form of a red or orange halo around really bright light. Now, the actual hue of this glow may shift a bit depending on how the colors of the film are mixed, reworked, or manipulated after being shot. So the actual halation can be different colors, but it most commonly shows up red. So let's get started. First up, the OFX halation plugin. So when you first open up the plugin, you'll notice that it's already working on our image. You can see the red halos are on the edges here, and we haven't even touched the plugin yet. The very first option in the plugin is to set the processing color space. We'll go for Davinci Wide Gamut, as that is pretty much the largest color space there is. So we have a few sections here. The first one is isolation, and this is what will determine which parts of the image will have halation and which ones will not. You can toggle the view isolated regions checkmark to see it working clearly and adjust the threshold to your liking, depending on what parts you'd like to have halation in. Now, I don't usually mess with normalization, but you can see here that it's affecting our highlight, but this slider can break your image pretty fast. The next section, dye layer reflections, affects the intensity of our halation effect. So you've got strength, gamma for the spread of the effect, saturation, which is the intensity of the color, and spread, which will control the RGB highlights of the halation. So if I take them up to the max, you can see how it behaves and what it's affecting. You can also toggle the fine-tune relative spread checkmark, which will let you control those even more. The secondary glow is the digital variant of the Pro Mist filter. Essentially, you got the same tools here for fine-tuning. And on the next section, you've got grain, which is basically the same as the Davinci grain tool, just built into the halation tool. And then you have global adjustments where you're making changes to the entire image. So this is our final image. And as you can see, halation adds that film-like character and texture to our footage. Okay, so next up, let's look at the third-party plugin, Dehancer Pro. Now, I won't be going over the entire plugin. If you'd like to watch a video where I do that, then you can click up here or in the description and you'll find my in-depth review for it. So for the purpose of this video, we'll close out all the tabs in Dehancer and focus only on the halation tab. Now, they do sell the halation only plugin, but I only own the full version, so we'll work in here. Now, what I found when I started adding halation to this clip is that Dehancer's halation is much more subtle, which I really like. I think people tend to go overboard with it and it results in the image looking amateurish. It also affects the skin tones a bit by adding some warmth to the midtones. And in this case, when I push the effect to the extreme, so I can show you guys, it actually gave it sort of a sunset glow, which I really liked. So the 2 sliders you'll want to really focus on will be local diffusion, which controls the amount of halation, and global diffusion, which acts as a source limiter for the midtones and highlights. Now then, you may wonder what the source limiter does if the global diffusion is already acting as a limiter. And what it does is it literally just cuts back the bright sources, so the default value at 0 means that even the weakest source is able to produce halation. The background gain will act as a range for the background tones on which halation becomes visible. So decreasing it essentially gets rid of the effect over the lighter tones. Smoothness controls the halo itself. Amplify affects the sensitivity to light, not the opacity of the effect. So increasing it makes the effect more pronounced. Hue will change the color, and blue compensation allows you to counter the times when your image is cooler in tone, which can mess with the color of your halation. And then finally, impact is essentially the opacity of your effect. So this is our final image, and I love how it gave this sort of sunset glow to our image. You can see in the before and after that even though we push the effect to the extreme, it still feels subtle and not as digital. It's very pleasing and easy to use. Now, this video isn't sponsored by Dehancer. However, they did give me a discount code, which you can use to get 10% off. Now, for a very last halation method, this is a node tree that I picked up a while back. And what I like most about this method is that once it's set up, it's easy to use and control, and you don't need any plugins for it at all. So in this node tree, we're adding in a linear color space so it accurately responds according to the original light levels of the scene. Then at the end of our node tree, we're adding another color space transform to bring it back from linear to log. In between, we have a layer mixer node with the blended mode set to add, and you also want to make sure you set the tone mapping and gamut mapping within your CSTs to none, otherwise this won't work. You'll create two nodes between your first linear CST and the layer mixer, stack them at the top and bottom, and you'll name one of them original and the other one high pass key. The only one you'll modify is the high pass key, and you'll go into the curves and bring them all the way down, create a point for all of them on the left here, and make sure to unlink the chain so you can adjust each tone curve independently. Then you go over to your blur tab and use this to control the size of your halation, and your gain control on the key in tab will now be your impact or opacity of the effect. The curves only affect the highlights, so adjusting halation color and threshold can be done using the RGB curves. The white luma curve affects the saturation of the halation, and the RGB curves affect the hue. And this is our final scene before and after with halation applied. So I'll leave it up to you guys on which one you'll choose. I personally never use the UOFX plugin, but I do use Dehancer and this custom node tree across all my work. I hope this helped, and I will see you all in the next one.